Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Veterans Beyond the Wire podcast. I am your host, Tim Keller. Along with me is my co-host, Mr. Matt Disher. How are you doing, sir?
Another beautiful day in Cincinnati, Tim. How the heck are you?
I'm doing all right. Yeah. You said beautiful day. Last week we started off talking about how it always rains. So I'm assuming it's not raining today.
Now in true fashion, we're in a drought, and It hasn't rained for a number of days, and I don't think there's any rain on the forecast. But today's going to be high 70s, nice and breezy. It's real sunny outside. It's a perfect baseball practice week.
Good. I know your son's a big baseball player, and seems like he's doing well. You said there was an early season slump. He's picked it up. He's got that hitting coach. Been working on some things.
Picked it up, crushing baseballs. I think he's had a hit or two in every one of his tournament games so far. We're generally playing 2 or 3 games a weekend. Nice. He's with the Cincinnati Reds baseball camp this week, so that's a pretty cool experience for the kids. They're all wearing Cincinnati Reds jerseys every day. Although it has been hot out, they're enjoying themselves. So yeah, it's good. It's good
to see what happens. On the field?
They will. They'll get to go down there at some point in time and be on the field. But then they're taking, I don't remember the rules of the competition, but they're taking like the top 10% of the kids that compete in each thing, like throwing the ball the furthest, hitting the ball the furthest, running bases the fastest, et cetera. They're going to take the top 10% of the whole group, and they get an opportunity to come down later on to the Great American Ballpark later on in the summer and spend some time with the Reds, I guess. So it's a good opportunity. Yeah,
that's fantastic. So it's kind of like football has the punt pass kick competition, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, we're gonna go off the rails very quickly here. If anyone knows who the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs is, Andy Reid, go search on YouTube for Andy Reid's punt pass kick competition film from when he was a young man. He's like 13, 14 years old, and he looks like a monster because all these other kids, they all look like kids, and this looks like some 6'3" giant out there. It's pretty.
This is when he was a kid?
Yes, Andy Reid, when he was a child, was in the punt pass kick competition. He made it like national finals, but he's almost full grown at this point in his life. He's just massive compared to everyone else out there. Looks like a child, like, because they are, and it looks like a man snuck in the line and put on a shoulder pad and helmet and goes, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna kick the ball really hard."
I have a really hard time imagining him as a kid. I don't know if that's.
By this footage, I don't think he ever was a child. I think he was born that size, and he's been that size ever since.
His poor parents.
Yeah, he's just eating 4,000 calories a day from the age of 1.
Right,
but. Like we like to do, we like to go to military.com, talk about some news. And since we're talking about football, I wanted to talk about the first article here. The acting Secretary of the Navy doubles down on denying Naval Academy grads the NFL request. So Cameron Kinley was a cornerback for the Naval Academy's midshipman football team. He signed with the current Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers as an undrafted free agent. The Navy is denying him his request to play in the NFL. So the active Navy Secretary, Thomas Harker, along with the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Michael Gidley, and General David Berger, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, they reviewed Kinley's request and deferred his request to defer his military service so he could play for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But they have decided to deny it. I know in the past, certain individuals have been given deferment on their military service to allow them to play in professional sports. I want to say just last year, as a matter of fact, there was a player somewhere that went and played. I know probably the most famous one would be David Robinson, served in the U.S. Navy for a few years before playing in the NBA with the San Antonio Spurs, and Dallas Cowboys quarterback Roger Staubach way back in the day. He was a Naval Academy grad, I believe. It was Army or Navy. I'm pretty sure that Roger Staubach was a Navy Academy grad. But this is one of those issues that tends to come up every couple of years. We have very athletic young individuals that go and play sports for these military academies, and some of them are given the opportunity, at least, to move on to the professional level. And in this case, it seems that Kinley will not be given that opportunity. Kinley was quoted to the Washington Post as saying he does understand and he does want to serve, but it did feel like somebody snatched away a piece of himself when he learned the news that he was not going to be allowed to play, or at least get the shot to play in the NFL. But I hope that everything works out for Mr. Kinley, and that he finds success in both the military and his athletic career at some point.
Well, he did. He could do a contract with the military. Just is it Alejandro Villanueva plays for the Steelers? He did a contract with the military, right? He did 4+ years, if I'm not mistaken, and then came back to the NFL, or came to the NFL, or is that wrong?
I believe he did serve in the Army, and then began his NFL career. I want to say he's with the Baltimore Ravens now, but he was
the Ravens. He was.
He was known. Yeah. He was known as a Pittsburgh Steelers offensive lineman there for many years.
That's right. Served with the Army Rangers, 3 tours in Afghanistan, earned a Bronze Star. I mean, he went and did it. Yeah. He played for Army prior to, but then was able to come to the NFL. So the career is not over necessarily.
Yes. He's it's a tough spot, because these young men and women that make it into these military academies are, in the very top percentile of young Americans, just at their academic level and their, willingness and abilities to serve. You're also going to come across some of these individuals who are extremely gifted athletes. It stinks that an opportunity at least is being put on hold. But in this case, this young man did sign up to serve. So, it's not the end of the road necessarily, but good luck to you.
Let's just think about this: serving in the military versus serving in the NFL, playing in the NFL. Sorry, serving in the military, $75,000 a year. NFL, a couple $1 million a year. I mean, they're almost the same. They're just about right on target with each other.
Yeah. The pay scale is about the same. The fandom. You're gonna, everywhere you go, you're gonna have people cheering for you. Right. Wearing your jerseys, or in this coat, in this case, your Navy uniform. Yeah,
you're with your team all the time.
Yeah,
it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Pretty much the same. I mean, I have heard football players compare their service, their jobs to service in the military before, and of course, they're always met with great criticism from the veteran community, saying that's not the same thing. Yeah, it might be physically hard, but it's not the same thing.
I understand, this in this case, this young man, he put so much time and effort, to even get into the Naval Academy. That's a huge accomplishment for anybody that seeks out that sort of opportunity. But then you're also now attending the Naval Academy and playing Division I sports and athletics on top of this, which takes an incredible amount of dedication and hard work. And so this individual has worked so hard for these opportunities, and one of them is now being not taken away, but put on hold. Right. And I do understand how this could be very frustrating for an individual, but all I can say is Mr. Kinley, you obviously have a fantastic work ethic. So, I hope that your service to your country works out and everything goes well. And that I hope that at some point this opportunity represents itself to you, and you can at least not go on the rest of your life thinking, what if?
Well, and I think that this is probably a topic that came up. I didn't see it in the article. The military traditionally, they have, all of the branches of the military have recruiting and marketing machines. They have to. The Marine Corps traditionally, as I understand, is the only branch of the military for a number of decades that's met its recruiting quotas. The other branches are, I don't want to say they're struggling for people, but you can see it through their advertising. They need people. And so it is my thought that perhaps this could have been used as a recruiting tool. You take this gentleman who plays for Navy, put him in the NFL, and now he becomes sort of a poster child for, not necessarily that going to the Naval Academy means that you are in the military serving actively with the military, but no less, it's still an affiliation or association. I think the military, honestly, in their marketing tools and marketing machines, should do a better job of taking people who are standouts, who can be celebrities, who can be famous, and putting them. And this goes with business people too, people who are successful in business, and putting them at the forefront of speaking engagements and things like that. Because now you can say these are the types of people that come to the military. These are the types of people that the military attracts, that are in the Navy, the Army, the Marines, the Air Force, the Space Force now, recruiting the best and brightest. And this could have been used as a recruiting tool. I don't know how exactly. Perhaps they did chew on that and they didn't come to that same conclusion. But I thought perhaps.
I think you're on the right track. There is find an ambassador, not necessarily a spokesperson, but an ambassador, a face you could recognize, you humanize it a little bit. Look at this standout individual, all their accomplishments, and look what they're doing now.
Right.
These are the type of individuals that, we're getting in these military academies. These are the type of people we're looking for. You could also be one of those people. So, speaking of naval academies, though, Edwin Buzz Aldrin, who is a West Point graduate himself, and later went on to be an astronaut for NASA, has said that he wants you to know that Tang indeed sucks. If you are not familiar with Tang, it is an orange-flavored breakfast drink that has somehow managed to stick around in grocery stores for about 60-plus years now. This product was not selling very well during its inception, but then NASA decided we are going to take this orange-flavored drink to the moon with us. We're going to take it to space and allow these astronauts an beautifully orange-flavored beverage while they're up there in orbit. Thus, it boosted Tang's sales, and it's stuck around ever since. I know that just the other week, I believe my wife and I were at the grocery store. We were going down one of the aisles, and I saw a Tang product, and I pointed it out to my wife because I don't see Tang on a very regular basis anymore. I want to say it was like Tang Energy, like they've added caffeine to it now. If you want to taste chalk and also, be jumpy at the same time, Tang Energy. But my wife just looked at me and she goes, "When you think it couldn't get any worse."
Right. I don't see Tang anymore. I don't think I've seen Tang it doesn't cross my mind as a drink that I purchase or that I bring home. I also love, if you look very closely on the jar there of Tang, it says natural tasting.
I thought the same thing.
What is it? Natural tasting what?
Maybe
it doesn't taste like orange juice.
Maybe Bear Grylls could answer this, but I personally have never tasted anything in nature that tastes like Tang. So
right.
What is natural about this taste? Because I have not come across anything yet that tastes quite like Tang in nature. I will say that NPR conducted a Twitter poll about the taste of Tang. 57.1% of the people that voted on the poll agreed with Mr. Aldrin and said that they do not think Tang is a quality beverage. Another 29.43 disagreed with Edwin Buzz Aldrin and said that they do, in fact, like the taste of Tang, where 13.47% of people, and I think they're lying, didn't know what Tang was. I find that a little odd. I can't say I'm a Tang fan. I'm not going out and buying it. As a matter of fact, I hadn't seen it in a while. And the fact I saw it on the shelf, it popped. I was like, wow, Tang. And I, gave the wife the little nudge with the elbow. Hey, look, Tang. Yeah, I can't believe that there's 13% of the population doesn't even know what Tang is. Personally.
I would just think that if Tang went to outer space, similar to the fact that there's a Tesla floating around in outer space, that adds to some of the famous reputation of a brand or a product. But Tang does not come to mind as that thing like, hey, this went to outer space, we should pick it up. It just doesn't sound to me like a thing. Again, I could walk down the shelves or walk down the aisles at the grocery store and probably I wouldn't be able to tell you where Tang is if it's there.
Somewhere in the beverage aisle,
Right.
I would say that this is possibly one of the first product placements. It at the time, the race for space was on between us and the USSR at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And, when people heard that this Tang product was going to the moon, magically it made its way into kitchens across the country. In this article, though, for American heroes' sakes, let's be clear about Tang. If orange scented furniture polish tasted exactly how it smelled, it would taste like Tang. The closest Tang powder ever gets to an orange is the picture of an orange on the label. Yeah, I completely agree. I don't think it tastes like orange juice in any way, shape, or form. It has a very similar color. The taste itself, not so much. So, yeah. Hey, good for Buzz Aldrin. He's stepping out there. He's presenting himself to the world and saying, you know what? I hated going to space because I had to drink this god awful beverage that they kept providing us.
Off the tracks, I've always said this, that artificial flavors of things don't taste like the actual things. People are like, oh, that tastes like orange. I'm like, no, it doesn't. It tastes like artificial orange.
Yeah.
Artificial orange doesn't taste anything like orange. If you were to eat the two things at the same time, or even better, artificial grape. I love grape bubble gum. Grape bubble gum is delicious, but it tastes nothing like grapes.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't. We know these flavors as well. That's grape flavored. But I'm like, but it's not really. If you were to chew on some bubble gum that's grape and then spit it out, rinse out your mouth, and eat some purple grapes or some Concord grapes, they don't taste anything alike at all.
Well, that's the thing is an actual grape. I don't dislike the taste of grapes. I don't think that taste though would do well as a beverage also.
Right.
But yes, I completely, and grape was the flavor I was going to bring up is it was pointed out to me years ago that does a grape soda actually taste like grape? Does grape bubblegum actually taste like grape? I mean, I'm like, well, no, it actually doesn't taste like grape, but that is the flavor profile that has been introduced to me as a child of this is a grape soda. This is what a grape beverage or a grape candy would taste like.
Yeah.
And so when you could blindfold me, put, a piece of candy or gum or give me a sip of a beverage, and I'd be like, oh, that's a grape juice, or it's a grape soda, or it's but that's not what grapes taste like. And same thing with
just like grapes.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at the back of your juice box, it says it's like 3% juice.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's
flavors.
Grape juice. Yeah, it's 3% juice. Like what kind of juice? Just juice. Shh, stop asking questions.
Yeah. It's brake fluid.
we call it juice.
It's brake juice.
Brake juice. I mean, that's really...
We just relabel it. It's juice. It's antifreeze.
They can get away with whatever they want to get away with. They squeezed juice out of something, and they have put it inside of this drink, and it's artificial flavors and colors.
Yeah. So yeah, Tang sucks. There you go. Breaking news. Tang sucks.
If Buzz Aldrin said it, it must be true.
It's very true. And obviously it was on the internet with the NPR poll. So if it's on the internet, it's also true. Speaking of things that are true, and this one, I didn't know these numbers were this high, and it's oddly mystifying almost. So there's multiple articles up on military.com about weapons and explosives and grenades, things of this nature. They continually go missing. So the one article here is the U.S. military guns keep vanishing, some used in street crimes. Another article I have pulled up is the NCIS recovers C4 explosives that have been missing for months from Marine Corps base. The article about the guns, it says here that since 2010, so from 2010 to 2019, that 9-year span, 1,900 U.S. military firearms were lost or stolen. So this is at a clip of about 210 firearms are going missing every year. Some of them are resurfacing and being used in violent crimes. Matt has the article for the C4 pulled up on our live broadcast right now. Again, this was 10 pounds of C4 that went missing. That the NCIS has recovered. They don't give a whole lot of detail because I guess the investigation is still going on out of respect for the investigative process. The NCIS will not provide further details, but it says it has been recovered. The 10 pounds of C4 went missing from 29 Palms. The command at one point did give out a potential monetary reward for the recovery of the explosives. But this is something that before we started recording today, Matt, you and I were talking that these have to be premeditated incidents. And you've pulled up the other articles. Some stolen U.S. military guns are being used in violent crime.
I'll say this first. I don't. The picture on the article is a Beretta 9mm. Mm-hmm. That's the last pistol I want to be carrying if I'm committing violent crimes. By the way, it's the clunkiest, heaviest pistol I've ever handled. Go ahead.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. By the way, but yeah, anytime we went to the rifle range or the pistol range and we were using weapons, you would go to the armory. You would sign out your weapon. You had your weapons card. You would keep that in the armor. They would give you your weapon. That card would go in its place. You would then give it a quick scrub down to make sure it was going to be operational. You would take it for whatever operation you were doing for however long it was. When you would come back, you would have to then take that weapon, clean it again, sometimes multiple times, depending on, what time of day it was and, how the armor was feeling that day. You would turn that weapon back into the armory and you would get that card back. So personally, I never gave it any thought of, I wonder if there's a way I could get out of here with this weapon and not have it noticed. Because at the end of the day, the armor is supposed to go back and check. And hey, I have an empty slot here. This card's still sitting here. Oh, Mr. Keller did not return his weapon. Let's go see Mr. Keller. So how that's happening, and these individuals aren't being brought right in front of the man. And hey, what happened to your? I mean, you were with us, these past 2 weeks. You had your M16 with you the entire time. Your M16 is now not in the armory. Where is it? With the explosives, us being combat engineers, we work with explosives, all the time. Now that I gave it a little bit of thought, I'm sure there's the opportunity out there to, misplace some explosives. But without really thinking about it, you would just show up to the demo range. There was like stages. You would go and you do the stuff with the dynamite, and you do the stuff with the C4, and you do the stuff with the TNT. So as you're doing one, you'd have to kind of slide, the C4 off to the side and, hide it under a rock and whatever. But at the end of all of these, there were the, for lack of a better term, we called them shakedowns. They would go through your gear, make sure you weren't trying to smuggle a ball of C4 out, some extra rounds out to the barracks. They pat you down, wand you, things of this nature. So, this had to be people premeditating this, coming up with plans of how to hide these things, divert the attention away from them. It really stinks. And I think this is individuals attempting to make a fast buck. If I can get away with a weapon or two. And the reality is if I was doing this personally, I'm not going to use my weapon. No. I'm going to somehow screw my buddies over and misplace their weapons. And they're going to be the ones having to answer.
Well, you think about the demo ranges too. You get to a range, you've got a couple boxes of explosives. There's an inventory taken. Somebody's keeping track of that. And I could be misremembering, but sometimes we'd go out there and be like, all right, we're going to use 3 sticks of C4 and this explosive charge. Mm-hmm. And instead of putting 3 on there, I only put 2, and I stick the other one in my back pocket and walk away. And I detonate, and I'm like, yeah, that was 3. And in some cases, the checks and balances weren't there. We very well could have walked away with that. That said, a couple of things to say. One, I have seen professional combat engineers, guys like us who were handling explosive all the time, screw up those shots and splatter C4, for example, or improperly detonate. And I've done this, improperly detonate something. So it didn't explode. For those who don't know explosives don't always just explode. Sometimes they just blow apart and fragment into pieces everywhere. Mm-hmm. So a 40-pound cratering charge, if you don't explode it the right way, or a shape charge, I'll use one better. I did this with a shape charge one time. I blew the top off of it, rendering it completely useless. Just blew the top half of this thing off. Didn't explode. So even if these things end up out on the streets, yes, it's exceptionally dangerous if somebody gets it into the wrong hands. But again, I have seen experts screw up the explosions, screw up the detonation of these types of things. So, yeah, this is it's frightening. The thing that occurs to me is that on a demo range, you've got an armed guard around the explosives. You got an armed guard around the ammunition dump. You've got people taking inventory. It never crossed my mind to try to get away with anything because I knew that the consequences were going to be so bad. I accidentally temporarily lost some night vision goggles, and these were the ANPVS. I forget what the number was, but apparently they told me that it was a $7,000 to $10,000 piece of equipment that we were wearing on our heads, and these things had the infrared, so you could see infrared chem lights and infrared lasers that your regular off the shelf at Dick's Sporting Goods or Bass Pro Shops, those things don't have the infrared in them. And we wrapped them up in a black plastic garbage bag because we were doing amphibious raids. We didn't want to get it wet. Somebody mistook mine during a gear dump. We had our weapons stacked and all of our stuff was sitting there. Somebody mistook mine for trash during a police call, and they threw it in a dumpster. So I had to go dumpster diving later that day, and I found them. But the sheer terror of the 3 hours where I could not find my NVGs, my night vision goggles, there were colonels calling me. There were people like the MPs were showing up. There were investigators there. Like, what did you do with this stuff? And I was terrified because I was like, I didn't do anything with them. They were sitting in this gear dump. And I can't imagine that it's any different than what happens when you lose a weapon. So even worse, imagine if your buddy screws you over and takes your weapon and hides it. And then here you are sitting there like, well, I turned my weapon in. Then you got to wonder, like, what if it's the armorer who does this? You turn your weapon into the armory and you're like, I've got my weapons card right here. And then they're like, but your weapon's missing. And I don't know how this goes down. But
at that point, I mean, if you're turning your weapon in, I'm the armorer, you turn your weapon in, it's on that individual. Make sure you were giving your weapons card back.
Right.
So if I give you your weapon, I try to pull a fast one. You're like, hey, I need my weapons card.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Whoops.
Here's your weapons card. And that could just be a play a numbers game.
Yeah.
Try it with, the first 10 PFCs that come to the window.
Yeah, get out of the line.
All right.
Yep. Got your weapon.
Thank you. Got your weapon. See you.
Right.
After a long training exercise, some of those individuals are wanting to get back to the barracks and, crack the first cold one or get something else in the stomach other than an MRE.
Right.
So, yeah, I would imagine that you could probably pull that off. You could get some individual that's just looking to get the hell out of there.
Yeah.
Tell them, oh, see ya. And they're going to walk away without their weapons card. And at that point, be like, oh, this one's going to go in the trash and this weapon is now missing. And I don't know.
I just like to know how many of these are which branch of the military, because again, from my own personal view in the Marine Corps, you're not getting away with this. Yeah. And you're going to have a terrible life before you end up in prison. You're going to have a terrible life there on base as they haze you and interrogate you.
Just every day from sun up to sundown, there are going to be somebody's going to be asking questions, just constant, where's this? And you're going to go from one office to the next, having to answer the same question over and over and over again.
And just for reference, for anybody who hasn't been in the Marine Corps, the Marine Corps doesn't ask questions in a normal fashion. It's in this very gravelly voice. Everybody's like, "Where's your weapon?" It's very frightening. Some of these folks are very frightening individuals.
It's very true.
That's the personality. It's the personality of my beloved Marine Corps.
Would not have it any other way. Speaking of kind of scary, we've talked about some mildly scary technological advances in war fighting and military operations. And, we talked about the robot dogs. Drones are a very well-known thing that are being used in military operations these days. It appears that potentially the very first military drone has been used in combat to autonomously fly and target individuals. So these weapons, known as lethal autonomous weapon systems, or if you break that down into the acronym LAWS.
We already have laws. Wait a minute.
Yes. Well, now there's a new set of laws. And these machines are programmed and they can fly on their own. They use their camera technology and they have the ability to recognize through photos and image processing, real-time image processing. Here he goes. The Kargu 2 is an attack drone made by a Turkish company, STM, and can be operated both autonomously and manually, and purports the to use machine learning and real-time image processing against a target. So essentially, you give this drone, and we have a picture of it here on our broadcast. You give this drone information, I'm assuming through computers digitally, of these are our targets. We want Matt Disher and Tim Keller. So it would give these drones photos of us, maybe video footage of us, our last known locations. And then what they do is the operators are given a fire, forget, and find capability. So fire, forget, and find refers to the weapon that once it is fired, guides itself to its target. So it would plug in pictures of myself and Matt, give the last known locations, and hit the button, and off it goes. One's headed to Cincinnati, the other's headed to central Pennsylvania. And it is going to just fly around the skies until it finds each one of us. And when it can find us, it's going to use that real-time photo processing. And then it will, without another human's command, will strike. Which I would have to say that the idea of a killer robot is mildly worrisome. You know, so let's say Matt and I are both generals on opposing sides of a conflict. You know, I send a drone out. I have given it picture and video and its last known location of Mr. General Matt Disher. General Matt Disher, though, has crack team of IT individuals, and it goes, I believe a drone has been sent for you. Now General Disher can send his IT department to hack that same drone. It has to be able to be done. Yeah. And all of a sudden, this drone that I've sent out is now going to be reprogrammed to come get me.
Yeah. A couple of things that this reminds me of. First of all, we've all seen the Terminator movies, so this is where it all begins. There's this.
Yeah, this is the T-1000.
Yeah, and this software starts coming out, and the software becomes self-aware, and then the next thing you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger's walking around killing people, coming back in time, and things like that.
Yeah.
I think if they wanted to make a realistic Terminator movie these days, it would be exactly what you just said, Tim, and that would be that they create Skynet and they create all these robots, but then instead of fighting the robots, and this is where the guys that wrote Terminator didn't get it right, because it would have been a really boring movie. Instead of physically fighting Terminators with machine guns and explosives, now you're out there physically hacking Terminators on the battlefield. Mm-hmm. So when Arnold kicks down the police department door in the 1984 Terminator movie, then there's an officer in the back of the police station like, I'm going to hack into his system and his mainframe, and then so now you have a bunch of crippled robots that can't perform their duties because of all the hackers. Because that's really, if you look at what they're talking about now, you saw it with the pipeline thing here in the fuel pipeline here in the United States. There's this conversation that the wars of the future are now cyber. It's cyber attacks. It's the Trojan horses. It's the disabling and crippling cyber security systems and things like that. So all the movies, if you went back and remade them, all the Terminator movies, now again, no more explosives and gunfire. Now you just plug in your computer and you've got some dude sitting in his mom's basement hacking the robots. And now this guy he's a Fortnite pro, that's what he does all day. Now he is in control of all the Terminators in the world, and he's the ultimate supreme power.
I would say, the online gaming community, I would say that over the past 5 to 10 years, I've seen more and more like opportunities for these young individuals. It tends to be younger individuals that get into the gaming at high levels. And there's now, colleges are looking at giving scholarships and things of that nature to these individuals. I wonder if these are backed, backdoor channels by some sort of government agency, because they're trying to find that next wave of extremely intelligent, fast-paced, computer wizards, essentially. Mm-hmm. And if they can find, I'm assuming that if they can find these individuals that are doing these high-level gaming competitions, that would also correlate to this modern-day battlefield training, right, that we're seeing, where some of this, like you just talked about, being able to get into mainframes, bounce around, do the the bad things in this case, and take things over.
Yeah. gaming, and also there's a small community of people who do like RC planes and drones and things like that. They have like RC competitions, for these drones and things like that. I realize that, on your large scale level, the Predator drones, the big ones that are dropping missiles in Afghanistan and things like that, those things are flown similar to like an autopilot system in an airplane. Like it's a legit system. It's not a video game. Well, I shouldn't say that. The technology probably is similar to a flight simulation, but the way that those aircraft operate, they're not little drones with the 4 blades or whatever. Now, the ones that they're starting to employ in the battlefield are those. They're exactly those. There are these little drones you can throw up in the air and fly it right there while you're hidden behind a tree with a pair of goggles, like an Oculus goggle on. And of course, that kind of stuff can relate to combat if you're doing it out here in the civilian world. I will say the difference of those is, for now at least, if you're operating a drone on the ground in combat, you can't just be a gamer. You got to be ready to pick up a rifle and fight because you're close enough to the bad guys. But I'd say the future of it, I think you're absolutely right, Tim. I think the future of it is, how do we make all of this stuff remote? How do we automate or remote into combat? How do we call into combat on a virtual level instead of actually sending people in? And I think we're seeing that on a greater level every day.
I think, as we're talking about this, I think that as long as it is a vastly superior force versus, not so well-funded force, this sort of thing would work, very well. If you were talking of 2 major world superpowers, China, Russia, America, European countries, things of that nature. If 2 of them decided to start bumping heads, realistically, I would imagine that we'll just use Russia and America. If we decided to start bumping heads, very quickly, each country would have a team of IT professionals that would essentially just crush and destroy all sort of satellites owned by the other country. Thus, making all sort of technological warfare obsolete. It would, and then you'd be left with, the ground troops and back to old school fighting. If it was, we'll just use America. If it was America versus any, third world country that's not probably going to have these capabilities, these technological capabilities, we'd be able to use a lot of this sort of thing, and not have a whole lot of roadblocks in our way.
Right.
A lot of this stuff, and part of it's just because none of this was around when I was in. So a lot of this is new, unknown to me. It's kind of scary to think that a lot of this stuff can be done. As a matter of fact, AI, robotics, drones, all this sort of technology. Here's one. I saw this article, or I heard about this article, and then I went and looked it up myself. The Week, it's a UK publication, but The Week published an article a week or so ago that says hackers could make sex robots kill humans. and theoretically, I understand. There is a Korean law firm that is warning hacking into modern day robots, including sex bots, would be a piece of cake. I couldn't do it, but I'm sure there are plenty of individuals that would be able to do certain things like this. The Deakin University in Melbourne, Australia, added, once hacked, they could absolutely be used to perform physical actions for an advantageous scenario or to cause damage.
Right.
So yeah, just you lonely individuals out there getting into that sex bot market, be careful.
There was an article a while, this was years ago, and these hackers were challenged with taking over some of these well-connected vehicles, cars, for example, the cars that are attached to, networks of some sort. And I scoffed at it too. I was like, this is ridiculous. How could a hacker make my car do something I don't want it to do? And apparently all these cars can be, a lot of the new modern technology, the car can be linked to things like the OnStar system. And I don't know if I'm not picking on OnStar. I think it's just any of these systems where the car is talking to another system. And what they did was they showed how they could make one of the wheels break while the person's driving down the street at 90 miles an hour. One of the wheels breaks, causing the car to crash, or it causes the braking system to fail, or, and again, I scoffed at it, but I remember reading this article and I remember looking at some videos, and it talked about how this is the future of technology. It goes back to the military scenario. Nuclear weapons were the deterrent previously. Nuclear weapons were what deterred us from going into full-blown conflict in the past. And my hope would be, and I don't know which is worse, obviously a nuclear explosion is terrible. I don't know what's worse in the long term. Is it worse to drop nukes on each other, or is it worse to completely cripple an economy, which would cause total death and destruction as well? You could cripple an economy by shutting down. I mean, it's hacking.
We've started to see it. We've started to see it.
Right. And so, all of these things considered, hacking and being able to get into systems and destroy systems and destroy economies, et cetera, we see it from here. They're saying that sometimes we have, hackers in Iran or Syria or Russia or China jumping into American systems. And I am sure in some of those cases, these are well-funded individuals or groups. Yeah. But I would also venture to say that some of them are dudes sitting in a basement somewhere and they just figured out how to get into a firewall. Yeah. I knew a kid in 7th or 8th grade who could do that. He knew how to do that stuff back then. And this was before computer technology was really what it is today. This guy knew of the dark web, and he'd go in there and steal credit card numbers and stuff like that. I knew this kid. So it was pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting stuff how it evolves, and maybe it makes nuclear weapons obsolete one day.
Well, I was going to say that maybe nukes aren't the that balance and check system anymore, and that is now like EMPs.
Yeah,
electromagnetic pulses. Because if you go to any major city and you were able to let one of those sort of things off, you are going to cripple that infrastructure. Right. If somebody went to Manhattan into Times Square and set off a decent size EMP, I mean, I don't know really what the distance, the kill radius on something like that is, but even if you got just the surrounding buildings from standing in the middle of Times Square, I mean, you're crippling thousands and thousands and thousands of people. It would be crazy.
You're back to the caveman days, and that is modern communications. It's hospital technology, anything that's not in what they call like a Faraday cage or something, or I don't know if there's some other way around that. If it's grounded somehow properly, it could be safe from that. But yeah, we've been talking about that for a while because a terrorist organization or a legit military organization could take a nuclear weapon and detonate it in the atmosphere, and depending on its altitude, it would create an EMP, which would knock out your cell phone, your car, your computer, your electronic systems, your electrical grid. Everything goes down. Mm-hmm. That's frightening stuff. It's frightening stuff, and we've seen what sort of sheer panic people get just from having like shutdowns. This was a year ago. A little over a year ago. Things were being shut down, and we are still reeling from that. We're still seeing the effects of that, and that was voluntary shutdown. That was people just saying, "I'm not coming to work," or government saying, "You're not coming to work."
Yeah, I mean, everybody's trying to figure out the price hike in wood right now, and I think since the last time we talked about this, I think I figured it out. It was all that toilet paper production and consumption we had about 18 months ago. They were just cutting down forests, like matchsticks, trying to keep up with the demand for toilet paper. And now there's no wood left. So they can't cut any more trees down for lumber. So what lumber we have is what we got, people.
I think
if you need a 2x4, go buy it. Yeah.
I think you nailed it. Yeah. I think that's absolutely right.
I don't know why I didn't think about this earlier, but yeah, it was that massive toilet paper consumption about 18 months ago that has led to the spike and the rise of construction materials.
It'd be great if you could sell used wood like you do anything else used, because I'm about to redo my deck, and it's wood. It's about 11 years old now, and it's gently. I could call it a gently used deck.
Gently used decking.
Yeah, but like if I could get a couple bucks per board, I mean, I'd be set. I could pay for half of my new deck.
You might actually, if it's not all completely destroyed, you probably could.
I could call it classic. I could just call it classic.
Classic, yes.
Like just call classic car, and suddenly the value goes up.
It's
vintage wood.
It's vintage wood. Wood. I know you are looking to sell a vehicle, and you posted it up on one of the social medias.
Yeah.
And somebody actually commented like, "Hey, I'll knock 10 grand off the price, and I'll throw some 2x4s in there." And you're like,
yeah. Yeah. Speaking of, man, I thought for sure I'd take advantage of this high cost of used vehicles. I thought for sure people would be banging my door down for this car. It's not happening, which I'm not in any hurry. I just want to get into something a little bit more capable of off-roading and a little bit more utility to carry stuff around in. I've had two 4Runners and a Toyota FJ Cruiser in my past. And so I've always had these like bigger sized SUVs. And now I've got this BMW, and it's great if you are just transporting children from school and back, but it's not, I can't throw furniture. I can't throw lumber. I can't put a lawnmower in the back of it. I can't pull a trailer with it. I can't go off-roading at it. It's virtually useless unless you're just driving on paved streets.
Yeah.
Which is what a BMW is. That's what
they are fantastic for what they're made for.
It's fun to drive. It's fast. So it handles great, but it's just not, I wouldn't dare take it in the dirt, take it camping or anything.
Yeah. I mean, I would personally, I would not want to have a BMW in those sort of situations anyways, where, every time the wind blows, I'm just watching dust collect. I'm like, oh no.
Right. That's it. That's it. 100%. So, it's got white leather in it too. So I'm taking kids to and from baseball, and of course they're covered in mud. And so every time they get in, I got to clean the leather. It's stupid. It was it's first world problems.
Yeah, definitely first world problems. Speaking of some first world problems, actually, we've brought this up a couple times now, but the term turnover tsunami has been coined for this year. We are seeing some estimates of a 40% turnover rate in some places. That is, imagine working in an office with 20 individuals. Okay. And saying that, 8 of them are going to be, new people. The 8 of them are leaving for new opportunities, and you have new coworkers, 8 new coworkers within the next 12 months in that office. I would say on an average year, maybe 2. Right. I'd say two's probably a safe bet. 2 are going to leave to new and better opportunities. 8 is a pretty drastic number. So what are you hearing? What are you seeing on all this, Matt?
Well, if we go back a few episodes here, we had Jeff Hancher on the show a couple months ago, and Jeff mentioned this back then. And I looked at him and thought to myself, well, I haven't heard anything about that. And I'm in talent acquisition, so I haven't heard anything about that. It wasn't in the news quite yet. So Jeff, in that regard, was visionary. Wherever he got his information or was tied in. This was back in February or March, I think we had him on the show. I could be wrong. But he mentioned this. He mentioned this massive turnover, and it makes sense if you think about it in theory. So we're talking about some companies up to 40%. Most companies might experience 25% turnover, which 25% over the course of a year doesn't sound bad. 25% in 2 months is really bad. That's something hard to keep up with, especially if you're in production, or if you think about companies that have to get logistics out on time, and suddenly you're missing 25% of your crew. So a couple of things that have happened. One, primarily, was this. People stayed put through the pandemic. People stayed put through all of the year of 2020. For a number of different reasons, companies stopped hiring over the course of last summer and spring. For in many cases, people weren't sure what was going to happen post-COVID. They didn't want to jump out of their secure jobs. Especially if you kept your job through the initial lockdowns, you might have looked around and said, okay, they're not going to get rid of me for now. Because a lot of companies sat back and looked at it and said, well, we need to shrink costs because of the pandemic, but we don't need to get rid of everybody because that might be a knee-jerk reaction in case in 6 or 8 months, or in our case right now, in many states around the United States, everything's coming back to some normalcy, or it has come back to some normalcy. I'm in Ohio. When I go out to the mall or to the office, everything looks normal right now. Traffic is back on the highway. People are driving to and from the office, etc. Nobody's wearing masks. It is back to normal, except your car dealership lots are empty, and I can't find an Xbox on the shelves. So those are some of the things that have happened. People have picked up and moved jobs. If you take a portion of your office space, a portion of your businesses, you have younger careerists who do leave their jobs every 2 to 4 years. And so they may have been in that, a certain percentage of them were in that realm of looking for their next opportunity. It's a job seeker's market. right now.
Yes.
And I think these are the notes to make. A year ago, 2 years ago, people would be knocking on the door saying, I'm really having trouble finding something. There should be no problem finding something right now.
Yeah.
And that's because the companies, although companies are picking up new talent, companies are dying for talent right now. Doesn't mean you can go, roll your resume covered in dirt, wrinkled up piece of paper across the desk and say, here, I'd like to show you my resume, all slyly. You still have to compete for these jobs, but at the end of the day, up to 40% turnover across the United States means that it's a job seekers market, as it was pre-COVID, but magnify that by 10 now. I think a few people have realized that through COVID, they could work from home remotely. They enjoyed spending time with their kids or having that flexibility, and were still able to get their jobs done. I think that's another big piece of this conversation, that companies are forced now to reevaluate their culture and their incentives. Incentives for younger people are flexibility. In fact, I've seen surveys.
Absolutely.
I've seen surveys that say, your under 40 crowd or your 45 and under crowd, they're more interested in flexible workspace. They're more interested in flexibility, being able to pick their kids up from school or take their kids to school and not necessarily be sitting at a desk at 8 o'clock in the morning. They're more interested in that than they are higher pay. So there's a lot of different things that companies have to come back out and reevaluate to make themselves the new obvious choices for employment. 100 years ago or 50 years ago, companies made themselves standouts by offering benefits. That's where the whole benefits conversation in America came from. We're going to offer you a 401k. We'll fund your retirement. You get medical and dental. Companies are piling on these benefits and they do it today still. Well, now it's companies reevaluating. If you can be profitable from home, if you can be profitable with a flexible workspace, then they should allow it. That's a non-traditional benefit. It doesn't cost them anything. In fact, it probably saves them cash in costing them turnover, which does have a real dollar amount tied to it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up is with this turnover. So if you're in that office, you have 8 individuals leave for new opportunities. That means you're going to, most likely replace those 8 individuals with new hires. There's that cost of onboarding and training and getting these individuals up to speed. And during that time, the workload for everyone else has increased to cover the loss of those individuals. So hopefully it's not all 8 at the same time, but over a 6-month span, you lose 8 individuals. That's 6 months of a lot of extra work for everybody else in the office. Yeah, Matt, you brought up as some places and things and companies are getting back to normal. Those individuals that did work from home and work remotely over this past year that may have found value in that are being asked to come back to the office, and they've decided, I really liked, doing this remote stuff. And there's plenty of companies that, like you said, have been forward looking and looked at this business model and have rescaled. And if their company has decided not to allow this to continue, those individuals are going to say, well, I know there's plenty of places out there that will. So I'll go, if I enjoy my job, I enjoy working for this company, but if you're telling me I have to now come back to the office every day, that's not something I want to do. So there's those new opportunities out there that individuals that have found, these new opportunities to be beneficial to them and to their lives, to their values. They're going to go to places that allow it.
And we found that we can do this work, remote work. We found that we can do it virtually. We can do it through Teams meetings and Skype meetings and things like that. Is there still a need for office space and hot desking? Absolutely. A lot of people still want to be in the office. They want to be face to face. It is just simply a conversation now of offering that non-traditional benefit of a little bit of flexibility. I know at my company, even the people that were in the office, were still able to work from home a few days a week, select days a week that they wanted to work from home. And that's something, not every job, obviously, if you're a construction worker, you can't phone it in, right? Or if you're managing properties or you're working in logistics, you can't be like, hey, things have to get from A to B and I'm going to do this from home. Some of that can be done, but there's always going to be those jobs that have to be done from home or rather from the office or from the workspace. One conversation I saw on LinkedIn recently was something along the lines of the discussion about pay rates being the same whether you're in the office or not. And the conversation or the conflict was here, do we pay people less because they're not in the office? And my answer to this, and I opined a few times on this conversation, my answer was that for most jobs, I don't see the value of what you're bringing to the workforce. In other words, I don't see the production value it's not in sitting at your desk at an office. It's in what you're producing.
What you're producing, yeah.
And that's ultimately why you get paid. It's what you're producing for a business. But there was this conversation which seemed very archaic. It seemed like a conversation that would have happened 100 years ago. If you're not showing up at the office, you're not getting paid. And for me, I'm like, well, if you're producing what the company hired you to produce, it doesn't matter if you're sitting on a mountain in Alaska. You're producing that product. You're producing that sale or whatever it was that they're hiring and paying you for.
That's you brought up sales. That's exactly where I was going to go. If we're both salespeople, and you can make all your sales from sitting at home making phone calls, and I produce the same number of sales, but my tactic is I need that face-to-face interaction. I need to be out there on the road. I need to be knocking on doors. The reality is the company is just interested in the dollar sign. They're concerned that Matt and Tim are both making sales. However we get it done is however we get it done. Now, at some point, if Matt is the individual that can, lock down all these sales on phone, and for whatever reason that starts to dry up for him, he would then need to change his tactics. Right. Otherwise, the company would say, hey, I understand that this for the past 5 years has worked great for you. It's no longer working and we're concerned. But yeah, the company is just worried about production. If you were able to complete your tasks that are assigned to you and your responsibilities, it doesn't matter if you do it in the bathroom, if you do it in your kitchen, if you do it in the office, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
I mean, I could go to the office, take a laptop and go into the bathroom stall at the office and sit here and as long as I'm getting my work done, as long as I'm not doing anything illegal in the process, I'm getting my work done.
And again, there will always be jobs that require you to be face-to-face with other people.
Yes.
Whether that's relationship-based roles where you're in with your client and you're face-to-face and that's what they prefer, fine. Or doing some other,
for instance.
Right.
You can't have a remote cop. I can't be at home and be out there writing speeding tickets.
Right.
It's just not going to work out.
Just wait one day, Tim, with the drone technology that we're talking about.
Laws. The lethal autonomous weapon system.
You will be stopped by Arnold.
Yeah, I will be pulled over. I forget what the one was that came to get him, but for a while there, he did take over the shape and form of a LAPD police officer.
That was T-1000, wasn't it?
Oh, was it? I thought Arnold was a T-1000. I can't remember.
No, he was a T-100 or something. Yeah.
Yeah, but that liquid guy will come up.
T-1000, Robert Patrick.
Spike me in the face for going 5 over.
Yeah. Do you know why I pulled you over?
No.
I was speeding. I
was doing this many over. Please.
Oh, yeah. You ever watch RoboCop, the Ed 209, which was that big? It was like the creature that they created, the big robot they created to take over RoboCop's place, and it would make errors. It was like, "Show me your hands," and the guy's like, "My hands are already up," and it's like, "Show me your hands." Yeah. So. Yeah, but you can, there's certain jobs that you can phone them in. You can do them remotely. I'm in talent acquisition. Again, most of the people I talk to in my business and most of the candidates I'm talking to are never in the same place. Obviously, the people that I'm talking to, doing business with, are in Southern California. They're in Northern California. They're in New York. They're in. I could go sit in. In fact, if I sat in my local office, I wouldn't be talking to almost anybody that I do any work with. I've done very little work with our local office. And a lot of that's because I run a military program. A lot of candidates leaving the military are not like banging on the door to come to Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So there's that piece too. But yeah, this is it's a unique time right now when we talk about this turnover tsunami. It's a great time for new people to get their foot in the door. I don't want to call companies desperate, but in some cases, if they need to fill a role, they're going to be willing to take a person who has 80 or 90% of that job instead of 100% of that job, which opens doors for people. I like to use the perfect example, although it's a sports analogy, but it is Tom Brady. And Tom Brady was not ever the top ranked pick, was not the top ranked draft pick. Mm-hmm. His draft notes or his scouting notes were terrible. Like they said that he didn't have what it took. And then the guy got an opportunity one day and ended up being the GOAT,
Yeah.
And so it's the same type of thing. You can do the same thing in business. You just have to be afforded that opportunity or get in front of the right people. And now is that time. And as I always turn it back to transitioning military, people leaving the military right now have a unique opportunity too to sell themselves as the next best thing inside of the company. There are financial incentives around hiring them. There are programs like SkillBridge, which also offer financial incentives. But at the end of the day, companies are looking for talent. Companies are dying for leaders. They are dying for leadership types with trades on their backgrounds. So bear that in mind if anybody is listening and going, well, how do I do this? Use LinkedIn, network, get in front of the right people. Don't just apply to jobs and sit back and wait. Don't apply to 50 jobs and then one of them calls you and you're like, wait a minute, what was this job again?
Yeah.
I can't, as a recruiter, I can't stand that when I call somebody. I'm like, you applied to my job. I want to talk to you about it. They're like, wait, which job? Because they're not keeping notes. They're just out there dropping applications for things. Yeah. So there's still a method to the madness. There's still the fine tunings of how to get in front of the right people. But at the end of the day, companies are experiencing turnover. Take advantage of that. If you're a job seeker, take advantage of that. If you're not happy where you are, look around and move.
And absolutely. And I'll take it back to Matt's point there about Tom Brady. He was not the top prospect. He was not considered one of the best athletes in his draft class, but he was given an opportunity, which is, as we discussed over the past couple of minutes now, there are plenty of opportunities out there. So find yourself the right opportunity. And when Tom got that opportunity, along with, hopefully top-notch coaching, that you would get this opportunity, his work ethic, along with the coaching, he put in the hard work to get where he is now. So really that's what it is there's plenty of opportunities out there. Find yourself the right one, get your foot in the door, and then put your head down and grind. Mm-hmm. Just put that hard work in. So, and as veterans, I think we all know how to grind. We all know how to put the head down and just keep on pushing. That is what we all did. So, Matt, I think this was a fun, not that we're solo, but just you and I, no guests this week. I had fun this week. But yeah, let's, I know we have guests booked up for the next few weeks here. But as always, if you would like to be on the show or somebody that has an interesting story or tale, we'd love to talk to them as well. So you can reach out to us. You can find us on all the major social media platforms, as well as all your major podcast platforms. If you find us anywhere, subscribe, like, review. It helps us in the algorithms that are, all these social media platforms and podcast platforms rise to the top and get seen and heard by more people. We would appreciate that greatly. So with all that being said, we are the Beyond the Wire podcast, and we look forward to talking to you next week.